Hey everyone, it's Classic DM, and here's another episode of our first edition AD&D for new players. And this time we're going to talk about the fighter class in particular. If you've been following the series so far, the first episode kind of gives you an overview of what PDF copies of books you can get from the DM's Guild and how to get started. Some of the basics that are different in first edition are very pure and simple. And second, third, and fourth episodes, we talk about some of the classes and some of the things in the game that make it really different and fun. The last episode was focused on the Druid. Go check that out if you haven't yet. And today we're going to talk about the Fighter, and if we get a little time, we'll talk about the Paladin and the Ranger, because they're kind of interesting classes as well. And of course we have the Assassin and the Thief and the Monk coming, Illusionist and Magic User, but we're going to try to focus today just on the Fighter. So before we get started, let's just go ahead and take a look at our player's handbook. What you need to do here is get yourself popped on over to, oh goodness, what page is this here? Go to page 22, all right? And at the top, this is right after the Druid entry. Right at the top, we're going to talk about the Fighter. Now, just in my own words, the thing about the Fighter that's just so fantastic is they're not like in 3rd edition or 4th edition or in 5th edition. You're not having to pick a bunch of crazy skills. You're not having to try to find something with a certain threat range for crits, like the Rapier was just overpowered in Neverwinter, or with a 15 to 20 threat crit range, and you're not having to pay attention to those kind of details as much. What you want to do is imagine any kind of heroic melee character you could possibly think of, from any book or any film or your imagination, or create one of your own design and just go for it, because the Fighter in the 1st edition has some of the best to hit rolls. They can use any armor, they can use any weapon, they don't have any negative penalties to anything at all. They do a lot of cool stuff really, really well. They saving throws are really strong. They're just a good straight shooting frontline type of fighter. So as oddly as it sounds, let's go ahead and take a look through here of the Fighter itself. So the principal attribute of the Fighter is strength. Seems pretty obvious, right? Look at our character from our campaign. Here's Mercedes. So she has a 16 strength, 16 intelligence. You don't need high intelligence as a fighter. She has 14 wisdom. You don't really need high wisdom as a fighter. These two values here, intelligence and wisdom for fighters, are just going to modify some of your saving throws. Dexterity certainly comes in handy because it gives you a defensive adjustment, which lowers your armor class. Hers is 15. Excuse me. So hers gets lowered down by 1. Excuse me. Sorry about that. The Constitution obviously gives you a lot of bonuses based on how your DM runs a game with hit points. I do max hit points and give you the Constitution bonus as well. It'll give you a system shock survival percentage that's higher. Constitution in the later versions of the game, like 3rd edition, 3.5 edition, they give you some additional saving throws that are really useful. Charisma is great for leadership across the board. Every character needs good charisma. It's one of the things when you first started to play D&D when it first came out, charisma was kind of like the whatever stat. No one had hirelings. But for the Fighter, I think that the Fighter is a great leadership character. They can give commands, make decisions about what to do next, and as the frontline fighter, taking all the hits, doing all the damage, rushing into the foray of fighting. And remember, they can use ranged weapons too. So you could be a fighter and use a longbow. You don't have to just sit back and stand in the front with a sword and a shield. Excuse me. Okay, let's go back to our player's handbook here. So let's read through this. So the principal attribute of fighter is strength. That's absolutely true, because you want to do more damage. So if you have strength over 16, you can see here's a +1 damage bonus. Let's take a look at his dollar. See, this is a +1 damage bonus as well. If you look down here to the Monk class, they don't get a bonus of damage because that's a trait for the Monk. For the Assassin, he has an 1848 strength. He had +1 to hit. He had additional damage that was lower than this, but his is higher because he's wearing a fire giant girdle. So let's go back to Mercedes again. So strength, obviously, the minimum strength of 9. I mean, come on, that's almost like orc strength. So, and Constitution of 7, that is it. You can do anything you want. A good dexterity rating is also highly desirable. A fighter has a strength of about 15. You get 10% experience point to the Dungeon Master. That's a rule that some people do, some people don't. There's a rule in the Dungeon Master's Guide that says, oh, for every gold piece you find, you get 1 experience point. So opening a chest with 35,000 gold pieces in it would give you 35,000 experience. You'd have to kill like 45 frost giants to get the same level of experience. So we never use that rule. It doesn't make any sense to me that fighter gets a bonus 2 experience because of a dexterity. I think it's more about what your heroic actions are you do as a player, as opposed to what your stats are. So let's just go and zoom into this paragraph a little bit closer so we can see it better. All right, here we go. This is much cleaner here. Gaining high strength gives a fighter a better chance to hit an opponent and cause increased amount of damage. Yes, that's actually true. If you have above 17 strength, not 16, not 15, you're gonna get a bonus to hit with any weapon. It doesn't matter whether it's a crossbow or a two-handed sword. There's no finesse trade or skills or anything like that like you have in 3.5. I'm not a 5e player yet. Well, we'll be eventually, but we'll see how that goes. So that's really useful. They have a 10-sided hit dice for determining the hit points. So Mercedes, where I use a max hit point roll, so she's level 12. That would be a natural 120 health, but she has high constitution, give her 1 per level. So that would give her additional 12. That puts her at 132. Most people like to roll hit points different ways. You can read the Facebook groups. There's a fantastic first edition Facebook group where people talk about this. I'm a believer in max hit points for monsters, max hit points for players. Fights are longer, people get to use more abilities, you can actually get killed, you can get hit really hard, weapon damage is a lot nastier. I roll weapon damage and saving throws, the things that are to chance. That's part of the combat, but for the statistics and the stats, I'm a little spoiled by the MMO gameplay I've been doing since Ultima Online. I like the max hit point in that level. So it's up to you how you want to do it, but goodness gracious, a level 12 fighter, if you roll all ones on your 10-siders, you have 12 health. So getting hit with a two-handed sword with 3d6 damage or 1 to 10 is going to kill you in one hit. So it doesn't seem to make any sense to spend your entire career earning 4 million experience and to have 14 hit points. So the way I like to work that kind of stuff is give the player max hit point, let their constitution bonus give them more advantage on there. No, they don't use magical spells, so you're not going to cast any spells. Your armors and weapons can compensate. So you could have a magical sword, like the Sword of Cass, or a +2 Vorpal sword, or things like that. They're in the Dungeon Master's Guide. You could wear magical cloaks and rings and jewelry and all kinds of things. Fighters aren't running around reading scrolls and use it, but they can use potions and stuff like that. Now here's a good point down here, right? Fighters can employ many magical items, including potions, protection scrolls, so they can't use like a wall of fire scroll, something that's really substituting for a spell. The protection scroll is kind of like an aid spell or bless spell from a cleric. So a fighter, if they have a little protection scroll, they can read that. No matter how smart they are, or how silly they are, or dumb they are, how much strength they have, they're not really a magic user or a wizard or a sorcerer or anything like that. But they can use a basic protection scroll because it's something very combat oriented. It's like saying, can a general in World War II read a battle map and assign an armored division to attack? Of course they can, and so can a private if wanted to. They can use rings. They can use a few wands. There's a few wands in the Dungeon Master's Guide that tell you that they can use them. Other magic items such as armor, shield, weapons, of course they can use those, and you want your desire to get those. Let's take a look at Mercedes, for example, here. She's using a +4 Zweihander, which is German for two-handed sword. So that gives her +4 to hit and +4 on damage. Her damage bonus gets a little bit higher. If you see this right here, it's +1. So +4 and +1 gives you +5. It sounds like an old Ventrilo comedy skit if you listen to it. Take a look at Zoller's. Now he's using a +4 Burning Glaive. He has the same strength. The weapon damage on that for small targets is 1 to 8 versus large and targets are 1 to 10. So it's +4 to hit, +5 on damage. And he has additional fire damage dot that happens when you hit someone with that weapon as well. So the damage in D&D has stayed the same through every single edition. Whether you're using an axe, it's 1 to 8. Whether you're using a flail, 2 to 7. Whether you're using a staff, which is 1 to 6. Oh gosh, what do we got? Scimitar in here somewhere. Here's the scimitar, 1 to 8. All the weapon damages in the game have not really changed very much. You can go look in the DM screen, the DM's guide, and see here's the weapon damage for small and medium. And small and medium means like little kobolds all the way up to people, to 7-foot tall folks. So here's all the weapon damage columns right through here, right? And you'll see that no matter who you are, you can use any weapon in the game. And the best single-hitting one-handed or two-handed weapons could be the two-handed sword, which does 1 to 10 damage, or a halberd, which is huge. The next one you get pretty close to is a lance on heavy horse. That's very rare. You would never use that in a dungeon. But even that's only 3 to 9. So after that, you get a lot of 2 to 8s and 1 to 6s and 1 to 4. So the damage numbers are a lot lower in the first edition. When you get to third edition and further on, you start seeing different numbers for warhammers, different numbers for flails. So when this game was first created, this damage range for these weapons was really designed to kind of go with the random damage numbers of some of the die rolls and the ability for players to hit things. Anyway, let's go back to this now. So once you get to 9th level Lord, he or she may opt to establish a freehold. These kinds of things happen a lot in the first edition. I think when the Gary Gygax and Arneson were first creating the first edition, in their mind, they really were trying to they were taking chainmail and the miniature war game, and they were turning into this fantasy game where you controlled one heroic character and Yes, and if you're a big hero, you're going to have this ensemble, the Knights of the Round Table, you're going to have the Crusades, you're going to have all these other soldiers, you're going to build a keep, you're going to have this place as a base of operations, and your dream is to have this magical castle with all these soldiers and men-at-arms and generals and colonels and captains and ballistas, and they probably imagine an incredible Middle Ages War of Roses of a sort going on. That's not really the case. The game didn't turn out that way. The game turned out into 4 or 5 heroic characters, like in Lord of the Rings, or in Dragonlance, or in the Drizzt Do'Urden books, and Streams of Silver by R.A. Salvatore. To that party of 4 or 5, they're the heroes, and they traipse around the world doing what they want to do by themselves. So you'll find a lot of rules in the first Player's Handbook from 1978 that talk about this. And there's some rules for it, and the Dungeon Master's Guide follows up with that as well. So this is done by building some type of castle and clearing an area of a radius of so many miles, etc. So you automatically attract a body of men-at-arms. These kinds of rules, you know, if you want to play D&D that way, you can. There's a lot of rules in the first edition that allow you to do this. Trying to run a battle with 43 hirelings, 17 heavy horse, 2 ballistas, 4 catapults, 1 heroic fighter that's level 9, and 2 or 3 sergeants that are level 7 and 8. Might take you a whole day. So there are war games, like for example the Osprey Warlord games, such as Hail Caesar, that handle those kinds of battles much quicker. So you could even cross-pollinate your game by doing using war game rules and war game miniatures for those situations, and using this kind of stuff for the heroic battles where, you know, 2 winter wolves and 4 frost giants, and you guys are all going toe to toe with these dudes, right? So let's go through the rest of this here. This is also talked about things like collecting monthly revenue. It's almost like a cell phone or mini game. It's not really what the fighter's all about. They have the typical experience point table that you see. You have little titles like Veteran Warrior, Swordsman, Hero, Swashbuckler, Myrmidon. They had these titles in Dark Age of Camelot. They were a lot of fun. They were based on renown rank. They had titles in Warhammer Online, Age of Reckoning. They were fun. They had titles in World of Warcraft when they first had the Battlegrounds. I think my wife got up to Marshal, and I think I got to Lieutenant Commander. They don't have those anymore. Even in Ultima Online, your highest skill, like whether you were a fencer, you had high fencing, you'd be a grandmaster fencer or master fencer, an apothecary, so your highest skill of the 7x GM stuff that everyone did would determine your title. So you'll find that on the character sheets, sometimes where it's appropriate, like the sheet for Alterna is an initiate of the 8th circle. So if we go back to the Druid page, let's go up here a little bit. Let's just zoom this back out a touch so you can see it clear. Let's go up to the Druid here, right? So that title is really coming from what level she is. So if you see here, Initiate of the 8th circle, that's when she was level 10. She is actually a level 11 now, so her title should be moved up to Initiate of the 9th circle, but I didn't update the PowerPoint. I made all these in PowerPoint. I think they're really cool looking. They're very minimalistic. If you like those kind of things, let me know. I can give you a copy of it. So let's go back to the warrior on our second page here, and we'll just slide this right back over here to the fighter. So 250,000 experience points per level, each additional level beyond level 11. So if you got to your experience points got to 1 million, you hit a level 11, then your hit dice kind of starts to drop off. I don't do that. I suggest you don't do it too. I just keep adding 1d10 for every level beyond that. Essentially, a level 9 fighter, say you have max hit points at 90. A level 10 fighter would be 90 plus 3. That's 93. A level 11 fighter would be 90 plus 3 and then plus the 6. That's not very much. The difference in experience is twice. 500,000 to 1 million. I think it's better to reward the players with additional D10 hit points. That way when they end up fighting some of the nasties in the 9 hells, the abyss, like Demigorgon or Orcus, or fighting things, the deities and demigods, or the demi-heroes like Favored and Grey Mouser, or Elric and Melibone, or Yakroon. There's so many fun, high-level, the Vault of the Drow, like we're running our campaign. You're going to end up fighting a Clavdra one day. Just keep pushing a boat out, because having a long-term dream like that for the players, that's so much more fun than this. And I think this stuff is a reflection of when the game was first created. It kind of came from a wargamer's perspective, and so anyone over 100 hit points was considered kind of absurd. So if you believe in that too, if you want to keep it hardcore, it depends what you like. If you like keeping everything by the book, then you do it by the book. But you may find that some modern players who played MMOs and other games, they don't really want to buy into that. So this also here, both strength and wisdom in excess of 15, here she gains a benefit adding 10% to experience awarded by the Dungeon Master. So that's kind of a double dipping thing, okay? Remember seeing this up here? If a fighter has strength above 15, here she adds 10% experience awarded by the Dungeon Master. And of course, the Dungeon Master can decide whether they want to do that or not. If both Strength and Wisdom exceed 15, you gain the benefit of 10% experience awarded by the Dungeon Master. So that's 10% there and 10% there. So that might stack. That might be 20% bonus. Or is it 10% and then an additional 10% giving you 5 and 5 or something? So law and good deeds of the meat and drink of paladins. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong section there. This is just a fighter. I skipped down to paladin. So this is it. This is where it stops. That's it right there. One column. One column. One of the most robust, exciting classes in the game with some of the best hits possible, able to use any weapon. So when you get ready to create your fighter, think about this. You're going to be able to wear any armor. You can get your armor class as low as possible. Lower your armor class is, the harder you're going to be able to be hit. You can get a weapon that you like. Pick a weapon that's cool to you. If you want to dual wield, dual wield. Don't worry about someone telling you that you can't dual wield. The way I like to handle dual wield is, maybe you have to have a minimum dexterity of 14 or something. That's okay. There'll be a main hand penalty for hitting with the main hand, maybe a penalty for the offhand. It's up to you. You can change those how you want. Take your tips from how dual wielding works in 3rd edition or 3.5 or Neverwinter or any Pathfinder, whatever you want to do. Dual wielding when you're not ambidextrous. It's not like you're going to roll on an ambidextrous table to determine whether you can dual wield or not. Like for example, with the assassin, where do we have him? Even this mini shows him as single wielding. If you're dual wielding, just go for it. Don't worry about it. If you want to play a character that looks like Dritz Stewart and using 2 scimitars, go for it. Don't underestimate the power of a heavy hitting weapon. So when you're picking the weapons you want, make sure your DM knows, like, I really, really, really want to go for a 2-handed sword. I really want to have my character all oriented around using the halberd, or I want them to use a spear. And I also want to have a backup weapon as dual wielding 2 hand axes at my side, a dagger in each boot, or I want to be able to use a heavy crossbow or a light crossbow. Go for it. Now let's go down through this Dungeon Master's to hit table here. So in the DM screen, it doesn't really have page numbers because it's something you folded out in your table. This is the combat and saving throw table, so we're going to pop this a little closer here. This is where I want you to see the power of the paladin. Let's say, for example, on this screen here, in fact, let's move these kids out of the way. Okay? Let's put a monk. Monk toe-to-toe. Let's move everyone else out of the arena. A monk going toe-to-toe against a frost giant. Okay? Let's say the frost giant's hit dice 10. Say the frost giant has AC 0. They don't, but let's just say, for the sake of this argument, the frost giant has AC 0. Let's say that this monk is level 10. And let's say this assassin is level 10, and let's say this warrior here is level 10. And they're all three going to try to hit this frost giant at the same time. They're all engaged in combat. Nobody's flat-footed. So for clerics, druids, and monks, let's put a cleric over there. Clerics, druids, and monks. So cleric, druid, and monk. All three of these here. 1, 2, 3. They use the same to hit roll. Okay? So let's say they're all level 10. So between levels 10 and 12 to hit AC 0, they need a 14. Do you see this right here? That's a 14. Let's just jot that down real quick. So we have clerics, druids, and monks all need a 14. Okay? Now let's just go over here to this one. This is for magic users and illusionists. Now we all know that magic users and illusionists aren't fighters. Let's say that Obscura, who's an illusionist from our party and our adventure we're running currently, we're in the G2, the Frost Giant Jarl, that's where we are. Say Obscura is going to use her staff and try to jam something in the back, right? Not really a good idea, but if you had to do it, you had to do it. Let's say she's level 10. See how her range goes to 6 to 10? It's a whole column shifted over. For her to hit the same exact enemy, she needs a 19. So for magic users and illusionists, they need a 19. Okay? Now remember, a D20 is really like a percentile dice. Every number on the D20 is like a 5% chance. Okay? You could take 100, which would be a 100% chance, divided by the numbers that are on the die, and every point value on the D20 is 5%. So for her, she needs to roll that number or higher. That means almost like saying you only have a 5% chance of hitting with a 19. For the cleric, the druid, and the monk, to hit AC 0, level 10, they have 14, right? So that means there's 6 left over. That means there's a 30% chance to hit this enemy. Now let's go down here to actually before we do the fighter, we'll do them last. Let's do thieves and assassins. Okay? So we're just going to call this thieves and assassins. What do they need? Did AC 0. Say it's level 10 again. Now they're pretty fortunate. They're lumped over at level 9 into the next bracket. But they need a 16. Okay? So 16 is it's about the same number that we had up here, isn't it? No, there's still numbers higher. Actually, it's harder for a assassin or a thief to hit this frost giant if you had AC 0. This is all to hit AC 0. THAC 0. This is a second edition thing, but whatever, I like it. Now let's go to the fighter, paladin, ranger, bard, okay, or 0 level halflings and humans. So that means zero. That means a 0 level. What does that mean? Yeah, all these say 0 level. So if you were to say you had a man at arms, a guy, homage to this longbow man, a British longbow guy from the War Roses or something, and he'd be 0 level. So here we go. Let's say you're a level 10 ranger, bard, or paladin. A bard's nasty in first edition. To hit AC 0, say a level 10 bard, you only need a 12. Okay, you only need a 12. That's almost a 50% chance to hit. That's like 40% chance to hit. So what do we got here? So you have fighters, paladins, rangers, and bards. What do you need? What's the number? 12. That's a big difference. Now let's turn the tables on you here real quick. Okay? Take that into consideration. So that means right off the bat, everyone's in the row of order. Who's going to be able to hit? Who's going to have an easier chance of hitting this frost giant? Right? So we're going to have fighters and rangers and bards, and that's followed up by clerics, oddly enough. Here's second place, cleric, and monks, and druids, oddly enough, who don't usually melee. And in third place is going to be assassins, right? And third place is going to be assassins. Let's put them down here. This is first place, second, third. Assassins. And then fourth place is going to be magic user illusionist. So that's pretty revealing, okay? So that's just the to-hit roll. Also, but some of these other classes have limitations on what weapons they can use. You can't have a cleric run around with a two-handed sword. A monk can't use a two-handed sword. A druid can't use a two-handed sword. The assassin has limited weapon selections as well. So not only are you able to use two-handed weapons that hit harder, you also have a better chance to strike something. And you can wear any armor in the game. You're playing a monk, you wear no armor. You can wear any armor you want in the game as a cleric. As a druid, you only wear leather armor, wooden shields. Assassins going to wear like leather and studded. Illusions. So the defensive abilities of this group are far less than defensive abilities of the fighter. For example, okay, let's take a look at this. Here's the armor class table, right? As a fighter, let's say you wear plate mail and shield. That's armor class 2 right off the bat. Let's go down here and see what it would take for that level 10 monster to hit you. Okay, so let's say that everyone on the table here. Let's start with the let's start with the illusionist. Okay, so say illusionist with no magic items and no dexterity bonus is wearing what? A robe, which is nothing. Okay, so for a level 10 monster to hit someone with nothing on, that's going to be this right here. They need a 0. That means they can't miss. If the frost giant decided to come over here and take a swing at this illusionist, and she didn't have any protection rings on, she didn't have any kind of deflection bonus from a magic item or anything, a ring of protection or anything like that, he would never miss her except on a 0. So that was not what you don't want to melee. In addition to that, the magic user illusionist only has D4 hit points. Even at max hit points at level 10, she'd have 40 hit points. This frost giant could potentially easily one-shot her in 1 or 2 melee rounds. So you don't want to do that, right? Let's go second place here. Let's take a look at assassin. So for an assassin, now they have dexterity, but let's pretend no one has any dexterity bonuses. They're only be able to wear like leather and padded armor, ring and studded leather. So studded leather is going to be the best armor you can wear. Okay, read this carefully. Leather armor and shield, padded armor and shield, ring mail, or studded leather. So studded leather is going to be the best armor that the assassin could possibly wear in the game. Go down to level 10 hit dice monster here. Okay, to hit, and what's that armor class on that? That's 7. Okay, to hit an AC of 7. They only need a 3, okay? A 3. So this guy, a 3 or higher. That means only 1 and a 2 will miss. That's pretty nasty. Good way to get yourself killed quickly. They definitely need their dexterity bonus. Now let's go to the druid. So a druid can only wear leather armor and a shield. For example, let's take a look at our druid in our party here, Felcherna. So she's wearing, she has a maple shield. She's wearing a studded leather armor that works as studded leather. Her armor class is actually AC 0. She does have a dexterity bonus to reduce this down. So she has this +3 leather wolf hide armor, and she has a ring of protection as well. So it takes 5 off of the number that would normally be there. So even for her to get hit, let's just say she had none of those bonuses at all. So she was wearing this leather armor and shield. She'd be AC 7. Okay, so This is the same thing we just saw a moment ago with the rogue. He's AC 7 as well, so he's only going to need to hit AC 7, a level 10 hit dice for Frost Giant. Is going to hit her on a 3. That's really nasty. We get over to Monk. Their armor class is completely different. I'll just skip them for now because based upon what level they are. The Cleric. Now, Cleric can be heavily armored. Say he's wearing plate mail and shield. That puts him down to AC 2, right? That's right here. AC 2, plate mail and shield. No magic items, right? All right, a 10 hit dice monster. Here's the AC 2 line right here. An 8. So, the higher level the monsters are, the scaling of the monsters, they can hit you much, much easier. But the armor class, very rarely will you ever have anyone with armor class much lower than -2. If you played Baldur's Gate or Icewind Dale or any of the old Black Isle games with the Infinity engine, you'll agree with me because you'll be like, oh my goodness, my characters aren't getting a lot of magic items. They're AC -4, maybe at most. So only when you get really, really epic level stuff, its armor class is getting low. So this is the balance behind the whole game. This is one of the reasons why the fighter, in my personal opinion, is in the best place to be for pure, unadulterated, high-level combat. They are able to use any weapon. They can wear any armor. It's going to be harder to hit them, and they're going to be able to strike their target. They're going to be able to use any weapon in the game. You could be playing a warrior or fighter, whatever you call it, and think to yourself, hey, I'm going to dual wield katanas. That's my cool thing. I love this theme. And go into White Plume Mountain and end up with Helm and Black Razor and be like, you know what? I'm going to switch to I'm going to switch to this longsword, and I think Helm was a trident, and I'm going to dual wield it. Or you could get a huge, massive Vorpal sword, +5 Vorpal sword, and switch to that weapon. Or suddenly you might get 2 amazing daggers and want to switch to them. No penalty at all. So there are particular rules in the player's handbook that talk about weapon speed and proficiencies and all that kind of stuff. And you know, if you played 3rd edition or 3.5, like Dungeons & Dragons Online or maybe Baldur's Gate or Neverwinter, you know they have these like martial proficiencies and exotic weapons. And that stuff isn't in 1st edition. 1st edition, pick it up and use it. You're a fighter. You know how to do it. So that's pretty much the fighter. That's what makes them so versatile and so powerful. And so in a way, it's almost like you would expect it to be in a war game, right? So if you had the situation where these frost giants were running into this cavern here, say here's your fighter, illusionist, thief, druid, monk, cleric. 2 winter wolves come running into the room. Here's 2 winter wolves charging forward at high speed, followed by the frost giant winter wolf master or something. He's got a crony behind him, and there's another joker in the corner, and there's another frost giant coming to trying to flank around this way. You see them, and they see you, and everyone gets to move, and it's the first melee round. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to want to get these fighters up in these front lines, go up and over this pile of bones, and choke this. You really have to think about it like a war game. If you haven't played Warhammer or the real tabletop Warhammer, or played any war games like Hail Caesar, Bolt Action, and stuff like that, these are the kinds of things you need to think about in D&D, because you don't want to have this. The assassin's going to be hiding in shadows. You're going to want the monk to make climb walls and hide in shadows, get up here and attack from behind when something's unsuspecting. You're going to want the druid to support, but able to defend herself if necessary. So druids and clerics are your second line of defense. Fighters are your first line of defense. These are, if you play World of Warcraft or any other games, assassins, thieves, and monks are DPSers. Okay, they're damage output with weakness, and you want those casters in the back. Casters can do tremendous area effect damage. A caster could cast 1 spell that hits here with a 30-foot radius and would hit everything on screen. Okay, so this is the thing about D&D that I think is a lot of fun that a lot of people don't realize, is that they think about it from the characters that they read about in novels, but how you handle the combat tactically makes almost like a war game. So it's a blend between a war game and a fantastical heroic game where the personality of the character is driven by you. So when you think of a fighter, look at the weapons, think about how to position yourself, get the lowest armor class you can, pick a great weapon you really love, keep a couple extras. I also encourage people to have a ranged weapon. And this, if you ever played EverQuest 1, if you played a warrior, you know how important it is to have something to pull with. I mean, you're not going to do a lot of damage with a bow, but having something to pull with is important. So this is what makes the fighter so fantastic. Now, there's the one last thing I will say is that if you don't underestimate this entry in the player's handbook, and you may say to yourself, well, you know what? Why would I want to play a fighter when they're on the same hit table as these other classes, the paladin or the ranger? which is really a bow using or a natural dual wielder, or the bard. Well, you know what? In first edition, there's nothing wrong with that at all. So let's talk about the paladin in our next episode, which we'll do in a couple days. And then after that, we'll do one just for the ranger and one just for the bard. And then we'll go back and revisit the fighter and talk about what the difference between these are and why would you want to choose one over the other. Because everything I'm telling you right now, you would think that because the to-hit numbers are the same, that the fighter would be just as good as the paladin or the ranger or the bard. But the paladin, the ranger, and the bard have different abilities and different limitations of what they can do. So they're subclasses in many ways to the fighter. So the fighter is the pure walking wave of destruction. Nothing's going to stop you. Paladins bring a little cleric type of diversity to the table. The ranger brings a little druid diversity to the table, and the bard, wow, they're a unique animal. They're not like the bard in EverQuest 1, but they're really, really different than anything you've ever seen. They're not at all like the bard is in 3.5 or Neverwinter. No, I mean Neverwinter Nights, not the MMO 4th edition thing. Okay, let's leave it at that. Hope you enjoyed this quick, super dirty, fast 30-minute video. And if you got any questions or comments, be sure to share them. Once again, I want to get a shout out to Sword Coast Soundscapes. I like to use all their videos for with open license that he allows people to do, to give him credit for the great ambience that you can hear in the background during these shows. And share the stuff with your friends. The more subscribers we get, the more content we can get going, and more minis we'll add and everything else. So hope you've enjoyed this episode, and tune in next time for the next one. We'll talk just about the paladin, and I'll give you a quick sneak peek. This is the signature picture from the DM's player's handbook of the paladin that everyone will always remember as long as they live. This paladin in full plate mail fighting demons in hell. So we'll talk about the paladin next time, and hope you have a great night and a good Christmas, and we'll talk to you again real soon.